Hi, I'm Yash Vijayavargiya. I head the content team of LawSikho. Today I'm going to be showing quick ways in which lawyers can use GPT and AI to fasten your workflow related to contracts. I'm going to be showing some really exciting tricks, especially related to GPT and contracts that you can use. I'm using GPT-4, but most of the things that I'm going to be showing to you, except the one where I need to upload documents, are on free version of GPT as well. However, the quality of responses will vary. So let's start. Before we learn that what is the best way and how should we draft contracts, let's learn certain things that you should never be doing when you're drafting or when you're using GPT. So for instance, for today's example, what I will do is I'll try to draft an employment agreement using ChatGPT. Now, what is an idiot way of drafting an employment agreement, right? So, draft, I am a lawyer practicing in India and draft an employment agreement for me. Now, this is something that you should never do. Why? You ask, because this is going to give you a very generic response that you can never use. Like anybody who will read the response will know that you have used AI for it. So, if I want to draft an employment agreement, what should I do? So, before you draft an employment agreement, there's something that you need to understand with GPT. The more specific your prompt is, the better your result will be. The more information you give to GPT, the better it will do it. So now what we have done is we have a hack for it. So what we do, so how do I ask GPT to draft a contract? So think of it as a friend or an intern that you have in your office. Now, and this intern doesn't know anything about the law. This intern doesn't know anything about the information, right? So when this intern is starting to draft the contract, how will it start thinking about the contract? First, it will go and understand from the client that this is the kind of employment agreement that I need to know, right? So these are the information that you will need from your client. Second, your intern will do a legal research that what is the legal position of law. So same thing, this is the same way in which you need to talk to GPT. So whenever you're asking it to draft something, you will always use the format that is ask questions. Ask me questions. So ask me 25 questions that you need me to answer to draft an employment agreement. Now, is this correct? No. This is again a very wrong way. We will further refine this into the two parts. So any agreement has two parts. One is the factual part, right? What is the kind of transactions that you're looking at, and what is the kind of law that you're looking at. So a better format would be ask me 25 questions questions that you need me to answer to draft an employment agreement. Ask me 25 legal questions that you need me to answer to draft an employment agreement. Now, before this, what is one thing that you will do? You will give it a role. GPT, assume that you are a contract drafting expert in Indian jurisdiction. Now, what is this doing? This is dividing everything into two parts. One would be the factual questions that are there. So 25 I have given is an example. You can make it 50. You can make it generally have at least 25 questions. That is a good part to start with. So now these are the questions that generally you, if you're drafting an employment agreement for somebody, right, you will be asking your clients that what is the company details, what is the position, what are the working hours and everything. So what you can do is just copy paste this question and ask this to clients. If they've already given you information, that you can just answer them in that sequence. So these are the questions, these are the factual questions. This is what you need to understand, that are these the things that your client want, how are they structuring the employment that is there. Now the second part and interesting part comes, that the legal questions. So whenever you're drafting something related to AI, one thing you need to understand is that Never do legal research from it. So if you don't know, for uninitiated, people have tried doing legal research and they have ended up in jail and with huge penalties in US, because what GPT does is it lies so beautifully that you will not be able to tell whether it's a real case or a false case, right? So whenever you're doing this, please ensure that you are giving it as much information as it is needed. Why have I followed the ask question format? To ensure that GPT is not assuming anything from itself, that every information that I am giving is here, right? So now look at this. What it has done, it has covered almost all the employment related regulations that are there. Now what I will do is I will go back, I will see that what are the regulations that are there related to employment law, and I will answer all of these questions and I will answer the factors. Sounds like a lot of work, but the thing is that you need to, most of these questions, legal questions, you will already know the answer, and this will also ensure that at least you are not finding flaw with any uh, current regulations, right? So this is a good way of drafting an employment agreement or any agreement for that matter, ask format, right? The second thing is, if you have a template, you can just upload a template here. So suppose I have an employment agreement template. So what I will do is I'll just upload the template and I'll give it the information and it will automatically fill in the template for me. That I will show you later. Now, the first part was that how do you draft an employment agreement from scratch, even if you don't know anything about it, right? So it will ask you the facts, it will ask you the legal question. Now, what is the second situation that can come to you? That suppose somebody has sent a agreement to you, and you have to see whether this agreement is good for your client. What are the onerous clauses that are there for your clients? You have to ensure that your client's interests are protected. So what do you do now? Right now, you go back and you look at every part of the agreement, right? And you read that how will it be effective for my client. Now, there's a very simple and easier way to do this in GPT, right? So what do? You just upload the agreement here. So I already have an agreement that I'm going to be using for this purpose. So this is a consultancy agreement, right? So now what I will do is, this is a consultancy agreement between say LawSikho and an employee. So suppose I am representing the employee. So what will I do? I will say I'm a lawyer representing the employee. Above is a consultancy agreement between LawSikho and employee. An expert contract drafting expert in contract drafting, read every clause and tell me if it can be onerous for my client, and do a risk analysis and do a risk analysis and negotiation report for me. Right, so what did I do? I uploaded the agreement, the template that I have received from the opposite party. I just told it that who am I representing, and then I asked it to give a detailed risk analysis and potential reports. So within minutes, right? What it does, it is giving me the specific clause, that this is the risk that this clause has, and this is the negotiation point that is there, right? So this is so good, right? Even if you're not a lawyer, you can just put your employment agreement and say that this is the risk that I have, and can I negotiate this clause? So good point, that what are the negotiation points that are there. So this is a second very good use of GPT to do a risk analysis and negotiation point. Now, how will you use it in your workflow, right? So suppose somebody gives you a contract. Within hours, you can give them a first analysis or risk assessment report and negotiation points for them. So suppose I've never drafted a contract before. What I do GPT to understand what are the important things I need to. I use GPT to analyze the contract. Now, the third important thing, right? Suppose I want to draft a very specific clause. So I want to draft a termination clause, right? So draft a termination, again, idiot's way of drafting it. Termination clause for this employment agreement. Now, this is a very, very bad way of drafting an employment agreement. Why? Because it does not take any context, which is the agreement, what is the kind of situation that you have. So how do we improve? How do we improve this clause, right? How can we make a very specific clause for all things? So again, there are two ways to do this. One is that you ask me 25 questions you related to facts and law that you need me to agreement. This is one way that I've already taught you. What is the other way? Draft an employment agreement clause based on common industries in edtech, right? Because what happens, every employment agreement is very, very specific to the industry. So here I will tell you that this is the industry, I want employment agreement or I want termination. So draft a termination clause. Draft a termination clause. And ask me 25 questions that you need me to answer to draft a perfect clause. 25 legal and factual questions. Right. So now what it is doing, it is talking about my industry. So the contract that I will get, it will involve everything. It will ensure that my client's interests are protected till the end. That what happens, what is the effect that is there on my students if somebody gets terminated. So now when I am giving a termination clause, it is covering everything that are possibly liabilities in an industry, right? So these were the top three things that you can do with contract drafting. We teach a lot more in our courses, but try. I hope that you go back and try these with any agreement that you have to draft. It will fasten your workflow by a lot. So that's it for today. Thank you so much.